According to surveys, power prices are one of our top grievances. Not surprising given they've almost doubled in 6 years. The ABC revealed last night that two of the state's biggest players, Energex and Ergon, have predicted an end to that period of huge price hikes. The state government has sweetened the news, saying if it wins the election, it'll lease out power and port assets and then use some of the proceeds to push prices down even further. But as Eric Twarchek reports, some analysts believe there's no guarantee they'll reap as much as predicted or that prices won't rise again in the long term.
Even when things are going well, many people have trouble paying their power bill. But things haven't been easy for high school sweethearts Stuart and Amy Glendenning.
When my son was born nearly 13 years ago, I had a massive heart attack and it caused a brain injury. And then I had to learn to walk and talk and everything all over again. In the April of the following year, I had a stroke. And then last year I had another stroke. And Stu had to leave work permanently to look after me.
The couple are now living on Stuart's carer's pension. Cheap groceries from a charity food bank help them get by.
It's not like you can do extra hours on a carer's pension. You know, you can't go and say to the government, oh yeah, I'm going to do a few extra hours this week so I can pay the power bill.
The couple got behind on their electricity account and needed a special government grant just to pay it off. What have your power bills been doing over the last few years?
Going up. Basically, they've just been going up. We're starting to struggle to really be able to afford them.
It seems like the more we do to try and save power, the more expensive it is anyway. So if we weren't trying to save power, I'd hate to see what it was like, you know, if we were just leaving everything on. It's just, you know.
Queensland's domestic power price has risen 93% in 6 years. It's now amongst the highest in the nation. So the state government is hoping to win support for its privatisation plan by offering price relief. It says its plan will save the average family about $120 a year via a $3.4 billion cost of living fund, if voters support the leasing of public power assets.
What we're doing is taking one item of cost that we can control, that is the solar feed-in tariff, out of that cost base, and that will provide savings to people.
Families are feeling the full brunt of Campbell Newman's broken election promise. Before the last election, he said that he would lower electricity prices by $120 a year. Families are yet to see that.
Labor's already experienced the public backlash from its asset sales, and this week Queensland's independents and minor parties promised to block privatisation should they hold the balance of power. The government knows that even the leasing option could be hard to sell.
I think they need to be more honest about the benefits and costs of this proposal. I mean, politically that may not be a sensible idea, but I think they can't get away from the fact that people are worried about this and people know that there will be adverse consequences.
So why is the government risking the electoral backlash? Basically because it believes leasing power assets will provide about $35 billion to pay down debt and build infrastructure. But it also means losing income. And to make money, economists say investors will have to cut costs. And that means cutting jobs and spending on the network.
They would make hard choices that public sector or government-owned corporations wouldn't make in terms of labour. They would run lean and mean, so they'd do efficiency reviews.
They may not invest as much in their network, and so consequently what they do in the long run is I guess they operate on a burning deck problem. If it's not a burning deck problem, they won't invest in it.
But it's not certain how much of those savings would be passed on to customers.
Ultimately, we will end up with lower power prices than otherwise because those assets will be more efficiently run than by a government-owned company.
It would dampen, I think, prices for a certain period of time until distribution network infrastructure would need to be upgraded.
Even without privatisation, the power distributors, Ergon and Energex, say prices will largely be flat for the next 5 years. so bill shock might not be such an issue for voters. But the government says there's still money to be made for investors.
These products, because they're regulated, they're in a safe and secure environment, are very attractive, and people like Australian superannuation funds are clamouring for this type of business.
There is a lot of interest in infrastructure assets that have been formerly owned by governments. Definitely a lot of interest across the world.
But just whether they'll get the money expected is another matter. Because electricity has become so expensive, people have been using less of it.
I think it's deeply uncertain as to what they're actually going to receive from any potential leaseor of these assets, particularly given the declining demand in Brisbane and the Greater Queensland for electricity.
The government blamed the high take-up of solar energy and the solar feed-in tariff.
It worked to penalise those people who could least afford to put solar power on, Madam Speaker. So those people who were doing it toughest, who didn't have any money to be able to put solar panels on, were in fact paying for the middle-class welfare that Labor was putting out there, for the champagne sippers and the latte set, with whom they hang around all the time, Madam Speaker.
Maura Agonetz hasn't felt like popping any champagne since she installed solar panels at her family's home. The mother of three receives the 44-cent solar feed-in tariff, but still shops at the food bank to try to meet her power bills.
Well, we've noticed a steady increase in them. We did get solar power put on and hoped that would bring them down significantly, which it hasn't made much of an impact on what we're reducing off the bill.
While she'd appreciate any relief, Mrs Annette says the government's wrong to target solar power.
It doesn't seem to be quite fair as a promotion to get people to do solar power to try and reduce costs and reduce the burden on the power grid, to then turn around and have the government paying for it over maybe something that's a bit more beneficial to people in the long run.
There we go, we've got a budget right there.
Amy and Stuart Glendenning would welcome anything that stretches their pension, but they're not sure how much the government's plan will help.
Feels like every time they try and say, oh, we're going to help you, the prices go up. So, yeah, we may get the rebate, but whether we get any benefit, it would be nice to see. You know, be good to see, actually. Make things a lot easier.